Peter, you still chair?
Yeah.
Okay, you can start the meeting.
So I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Town Council's Community and Economic Development Committee. We have a short agenda, 3 items on the agenda. The second agenda item is public comments. Is there any public comments? Anyone with a public comment?
Yes.
David Hanson, 665 Pleasant Street, Bridgewater.
Hey, Dave.
How you doing?
Good. Go ahead.
I'm just calling to point out a few things on the last time you brought this up at a meeting, and the raw milk a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And one thing that wasn't brought up is that the comment was made that there are only 20-something farms that sell raw milk in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
But there are only about 100 dairy farms left in Massachusetts. And there are only 2, maybe 3 in Plymouth County and only 1 in Norfolk County. The raw milk issue would allow people to perhaps get back into the dairy industry. And once you get some income from raw milk, then you could go into the pasteurization, the making ice cream, yogurt, cheese, all of those for on a local basis.
Right.
The regulations that the state would impose on somebody that wants to get into raw milk, the first thing anybody has to do is they have to have their cows tested to make sure they don't have any one of 4 different issues such as brucellosis, tuberculosis, and there's a couple others. And then equipment has to be and facilities have to be inspected, and they're generally inspected on a monthly basis through the state. And I years ago, when we sold our cows, I had considered getting into this, and the Board of Health came up to the barn and inspected it, and they gave me so many issues that I kind of dropped it, and they said that the town had an ordinance that prohibited the sale of raw milk in Bridgewater, which we have not been able to find anything to that effect. So whether I ever get into it or not, I don't know whether I'd like to, but it should be something that's available to anybody that wants to, and it would also help open space, keep open space, and have products produced locally, which is certainly a plus for the town of Bridgewater. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's
Can I speak? Janet Hanson,
sure, go ahead, Janet.
Pleasant Street, just to emphasize, what David said. And I did send a letter. I don't know if you all got it, but it was forwarded to Jennifer and Deborah Ward. It has a lot of information and different links, regarding the sale of raw milk. And raw milk is not sold in the stores. It only can be sold by the farmer directly on the farm. So, and it's for those people that are really want it. And he gets inquiries on a weekly basis from people that really are interested in it. And there is health benefits with raw milk. And so just, and I don't know why the town would need to not allow it. It's not going to hurt anything, and it would help the farmers. And this is goat's milk too. It's not just dairy, and you don't have to have a large farm. You can have a small amount of farms. So just keep that in mind. Plus, it was never truly an ordinance despite being told. So we'd like to just be able to have that option.
People should have a choice.
Right.
Thank you.
Let me just read the copy from the board. It's an order, sale of raw milk. Whereas the Commonwealth of Massachusetts allows the sale of raw milk under Mass General Law 94, paragraph 13.330, MAADC .201. And whereas the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources provides certificates of registration to our dairy farms, and whereas they grant permission for the retail sale of raw milk on the farm, now therefore the sale of raw milk be allowed on the dairy farms in Bridgewater. So I guess the key thing is that this is a public health issue, potentially a public health issue if we don't monitor the health of the herd and the cleanliness of the processing but if that's all in order, presumably it's not a problem, and this really hinges on the kind of inspection process.
The state the state takes care of that. The state, you have to get all this and regulations, you have to post the risk. And it's not going to be like a mass production that's going to be in the stores to worry about the sale of raw milk. And farmers drink their own milk. So it's allowed by the state, but it's regulated by the state, and they have to sometimes go through more regulations than they do if they were just doing it through a handler.
Right.
So the risk is minimal.
Yeah. Okay, do we have, either of you have any input?
Well, it's still public comment, right? So I'm hoping that, so let me ask you, Pete. So I was the one that asked for the Board of Health members to be involved. So if we, end public comment, can we ask questions of the Board of Health during the item itself on the agenda, or do you want to get into that discussion ahead of the item?
I don't know.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I think I can perhaps shorten the whole evening for all of us. Let me just give you some recent history, as recent as this afternoon. This afternoon, our town manager, Michael Dutton, received an email response from the State Department of Animal Health from Mr. Mark Cahill, who is the Director of Animal Health for Massachusetts. And he was writing to our town manager in response to questions that our town manager had raised of the department, of the division, I should say. And I can summarize that for you. I would actually, if my phone were working, I'd be happy to read to you specifically what it says, and I can forward that for the record at another point. Yeah. But to just to give you the sense of it, there is nothing that the town needs to do in order to enable a farm in Bridgewater to sell raw milk products. All that has to be done is that the applicant, the farm, would need to make registration application to the Division of Animal Health. Right. And there's a process that's entailed, and some of which was referred to by Mr. Hansen. And they make their determination as to whether the facilities, run by that farm are suitable, right, et cetera. So there's nothing that the town of Bridgewater right now needs to do to enable that.
So we really don't have any jurisdiction.
We really don't. Yeah. The point is, at a time before the town of Bridgewater implemented the council form of government that we have, so some 10 years plus ago, right, there was a Board of Health regulation that did apparently limit, I should say prohibit, right, the sale of raw milk products. That is no longer in effect. Nothing similar is in effect.
So that doesn't need to be rescinded.
That's right. Right. So the short answer is, and for the benefit of Mr. Souza, who sponsored this legislation, and Mr. and Mrs. Hansen, is that the Hansens are free to go to the Department of Animal Health, commence the procedure, right, and subject to their regulations, engage in the sale of raw milk. That said, there is nothing that would prohibit the town of Bridgewater at any point from prohibiting
Right,
the sale of raw milk. So the issue has now been raised.
right.
So the point is that today the Hansons are free to commence the procedure if they wish. They and any other similarly situated farm in town needs to understand that there's always the risk that the town could act to prohibit the sale of raw milk products. I have, for the benefit of the Hansons, I wasn't sure if we were all going to, if they might be here in person as well. I have a full copy of the 17 pages of regulations they might be interested in from the division
Right.
if they choose to engage in the sale of raw milk. And the email I referred to that I will make available to the committee and to the Hansons identifies contact persons at the Division of Animal Health
Right.
who will assist them in executing that application process. It's no secret that I had acted at town council 3 months ago to table this measure. Personally, I am opposed to it. Should the need arise, I am very capable and willing of bringing forth reasons for which the town should not engage in the sale of raw milk. But that's not an item for this evening.
Right. So in short, this needn't have come to the council at all.
It needn't have, that's correct. The only point I would refer to in the actual order that is of any concern is the fact that it refers to the certificates of registration. And it reads, the Massachusetts Department of Agriculture Resources provided, past tense, certificates of registration to our dairy farms. So just to be clear, as of today, in the town of Bridgewater, no dairy farm currently holds a certificate of registration. That can be done, but that is not what is set forth in this proposed order. So that is my only comment, and
Yeah.
I'll leave it to you.
Do you have any comment? Bill?
Yeah, I've actually done a lot of research on the subject, which I don't need to go into now. But two things. First of all, I know there are a ton of observations that someone in the health industry needs to make in the case of one of these facilities. I've read through regulations of about 6 different states, the European Union, and a couple other areas. And most have very strict guidelines on quick cooling of the milk,
Right.
storage, extension of the storage, like no more than 24 hours in a holding tank, no more than 4 days on the shelf. And all of them, all the states, have in their regulations warning labels that they
Buyer
put
beware.
out. Not buyer beware. Raw milk is dangerous to children, pregnant women, and some other people. And they have strict signage. But I had questions for the planning board because, I mean, not the planning board, sorry, Board of Health, because it seemed like it was beyond the state needing to check to make sure the refrigeration was at 40 degrees all the
Right,
time.
right.
And to check to make sure stock was being turned over all the time. And the cleanliness of the handling. It seemed to be more frequent need than like once a month or something like
Yeah, I
that. So
mean,
I was wondering,
so if you come once every
Yeah,
30 days,
so-
what are the chances of finding non-compliance?
right, so I was wondering, given this regulation, if they had independently done any discussions over how would we monitor this? That's part one. Part two is, and again, we don't have to get into deep discussions about this, but I was also trying to discover what defines a farm. Now, clearly, we can all go to the farm and see animals and,
Right.
Hay and things like that. So you kind of intuitively know what a farm is, but I was looking for what is a farm, because if you read the raw milk MGL code and regulations, it's not just cows, it's goats.
Right.
And the reason I raise that, because if this order had gone forward and we, had allowed raw milk sales, the question then was, okay, so what happens on Peterson's farm or Wildwood Farm or Joe's backyard who has
Right.
goats?
Right.
You know, and how do we manage that? Because it seems like if I had 6 goats in my backyard, can I sell raw
Are
goat
you a
milk?
farmer?
Am I a farmer at that point? But it seems like we don't have any
Purview, really.
you know, right now over this, so we don't have to get into discussions, but those were that's why I'd asked the Board of Health to come in, because I wanted to hear what type of activities. And I see,
Right.
it's hard to see Pat because your thing's small, but I see Pat's hand up, so maybe she has a couple items to talk about too.
Yeah, Pat Neary, did you have something to say?
Yes, I wanted to speak about a couple of things this evening. I'm sorry, my lawn guy is on my deck.
don't-
I hope you can't hear him. Anyway, I wanted to support the idea of having a sale for raw milk because, well, first of all, my term on the Board of Health is ending, and therefore I will comment this evening as a Bridgewater resident. The sale of raw milk is allowed in our state, as you've already discussed. If the Hansons or another farm or farmer decides to sell milk in our town, it's perfectly acceptable because we don't have a prohibition. I think that there are so many state regulations and a vendor's license that they have to get. And there's ongoing testing, storage, literature. It's a huge responsibility for the farmer or the person that is selling raw milk from their facility. You cannot have delivered raw milk. It has to be directly from the farmer or the producer. So you've already covered most of that, but it's a giant responsibility. If they want to do it, they should be able to do it. Raw milk does have a couple of concerns, but mostly it's a health benefit. I mean, I think most of the older generation has had raw milk in their childhood and ongoing. I know I have. So it's just a matter of storage, testing, as I said, refrigeration. It's a lot of discipline on the farmer's side. So the town doesn't have to do too much with it because the permits come from the Mass Department of Agriculture, as Mr. Chase said. So I'm fully supporting the fact that if they want to do raw milk, it's their responsibility. The other item I wanted to speak about was Maryland's Landing tonight.
Why
I
don't you
know-
hold that till we get to that item?
Oh, we're going to still have a public forum?
Yeah, I mean, for each item, there'll be a public forum, yeah.
Usually it's in the beginning, so I wanted to make sure I was able to speak.
Yeah, just hold those thoughts.
All right.
I
Okay.
just had one more thought if I could, because I forgot, I didn't, knowing that we're kind of changing course there, I didn't put down a lot of talking points, but my uncle's family owned Brock's Dairy up in Lawrence.
Mhm.
And when this first surfaced, I called my uncle, who's now in his mid-80s. And he's like, and you can read different literature and different opinions, but he grew up at a time when they had a dairy and they could have done raw milk, but it was 25% of food illness was related to raw milk. He said pasteurization was the best thing that ever happened because it became a much safer commodity at that point. You know, so that's all.
If I could have one more
Sure.
comment. What really cited my interest and concern about this issue was a discussion I'd had with my wife, who is a registered nurse. And she has worked for over 35 years, maybe something a little more than that, as a registered nurse. Most of that time in one of 3 large Boston hospitals. She was also, for a limited time, when our children were very small, she was a school nurse here in Bridgewater and Raynham. One of her past assignments, she was employed by Boston Children's Hospital, and she did work there for 12 years. And she worked in an organ transplant unit. She left that job. That was really after about a 12-year stint. That was really a very difficult daily job. It was very stressful. She wanted to seek a different opportunity with a little less stress on an everyday basis. But while she was working at Children's, she treated a child. I think she told me that the girl was about 5 years of age or thereabouts. And she has on several occasions referred to this patient in discussion with me as being the sickest child she's ever seen or heard of in her life, certainly in her professional practice. That child had consumed ice cream made from raw milk. She was diagnosed with, and I won't get the name correctly, hemolytic, I can't think of the name, so I won't try to go any further. But it attacks the organs. And in her case, I think it specifically attacked kidneys.
HUL.
The potential effects of contaminated raw milk ingestion, particularly for children. So I do just point that out anecdotally, just for what it's worth, because that really did prompt me to give closer attention to the issue.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so unless, well, we can still do it. I'll make a motion to move this back to the full council.
Can we had our hand up for another comment. Can we comment again?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Janet.
There has been a bill filed by one of the legislators in the western part of the state to, I don't know how to explain it other than to handle milk like they do vegetables in the CSA, Community Supported Agriculture.
Yeah.
In that the people can pay the farmer and get the milk delivered as long as it's the same idea as they pay before they get it delivered. This is a bill that's been filed. And in comments to Mr. Wood, we don't know how long ago you were talking by what you said, but the regulations that are in effect today are the result of all those years when there wasn't any regulations to protect the quality of the milk. And thus, those things don't happen. I hear things about lettuce almost all the time, and they haven't banned lettuce yet. And then the other thing is that, and it's part of my, if I were to sell raw milk, it would be my responsibility to teach the people how to handle that milk once they buy it. And that is a very important part of it. And that could be a part of that issue that Mr. Chase mentioned. You don't know that it was the farmer's fault on any of those things that you folks mentioned. And I just wanted to make sure that was pointed out.
And anybody, you mentioned, Mr. Wood, about people with goats in the backyard and stuff. No one can sell raw milk unless they get the license and meet all the regulations in the state. It's actually more stringent than a dairy farm has to when they sell the milk to the handlers. And the raw milk is kept some farmers alive, and Lowland's farm in Middleborough just got approved to be able to sell raw milk. They went through all the regulations, so they're selling raw milk. If you look at all the map that I sent you of the farms that, at least on the map, that are selling raw milk, and it may not count other things, but those are the ones that are licensed by the state. No one can sell it without it. And you don't hear of, I don't know, have you heard of any horror stories from those people that have been selling the raw milk? I haven't. So
The only issues that I recall in the last 20 or 30 years have both been by processors that processed the milk before they sold it and either added the wrong vitamins to it or too much of the vitamins,
Not raw milk.
not raw milk. We're talking about pasteurized and homogenized products, the flavored milks. The dairies that produced them made the mistakes that caused health issues. Then there was nothing to do with raw milk. They were both certified bottlers that tried to cut corners, and thus people got sick. I haven't heard of anything with raw milk on those circumstances.
So we hope,
Thank you.
If I can, so CDC records from 93 to 2006, 121 outbreaks that were linked to dairy products identified as pasteurized or unpasteurized. And the outbreaks resulted in 44 13 illnesses, 239 hospitalizations, and 3 deaths.
So 3 deaths over how long a period?
Well, over multiple years.
Right.
Right.
Not much different than any other type of food.
Yeah, so it's no longer a question because it's not it's probably not going to be our question. It's going to be whether you can certify your herd and sell raw milk. So it's pretty straightforward at this point. Doesn't really matter what we think because it's going to be a state
We have
decision.
no purview, really.
But
We have no jurisdiction. Really.
as a friend said, it's kind of like sushi, right? So sushi is dangerous after a couple days.
Yeah.
Right off the table, right off the knife, it's probably not,
Yeah.
But and I don't think raw milk, well handled, inherently is dangerous. It's when it goes beyond and it's got it's got multiple things inherently that it can grow. And I can't list them all, but those are not in pasteurized milk.
speak for Cook.
Just my last comment that if the facilities are properly maintained and the equipment, you're not going to have those things in the milk to begin with.
And you mentioned we can go ahead and do it, but then you mentioned that the town could possibly prohibit, and that's what we're trying to prevent. So, thank you.
If I may, just on that last point, Mrs. Hanson, I say that personally as a cautionary statement. In other words, I would feel badly if you were to go out and make a big investment in the potential sale of raw milk and perhaps be approved for the sale of raw milk, only to have the town council, if they were presented with such a motion, such a resolution, to prohibit the sale of town milk. It would be within the power of the town council alone to do that. So, I just offer that as a courtesy, more or less. There's nothing before the town council to do that right now, but tomorrow's another day. So I just offer it as a caution.
I just don't understand why the town would feel the need to prohibit that. So,
That's
that, I don't see why.
all right. And it would require, like anything else, a counselor to come forward and to present a proposal to the town council for adoption. And it's really beyond the scope of what we're here to talk about tonight. It's like anything else before the town council. It would be noticed, the public would be invited for comment, there would be discussion, there would be presentations, et cetera, and votes. And so my point is simply that the issue has now been raised by virtue of your request to have this before the committee tonight. In other words, what we have resolved only as of finally today is that there is, town has to do to approve the sale of raw milk, but the town could take steps to prohibit the sale of raw milk.
Thank you.
How much milk is the farm producing now?
Why are you asking that?
I'm just interested.
I'm not producing any milk presently. I haven't sold any milk since March 11th, 1996.
All right.
I
Nice.
milk a cow every once in a while when she calves before I sell it to another dairy farm, and I drink the milk myself, or I feed it to the calves.
Yeah. All right, so we'll go back to, I make a motion to return this back to the full council without a recommendation.
I would second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Well, you can have any discussion. If you
Well,
want.
okay. I'm personally in favor of this sale of raw milk. So I'm opposed to that motion. It looks like I'm
So,
outvoted, but
so if it follows the track, because when it gets back to the full council, I would expect some counselor to say that the order allowing raw milk is superfluous,
right,
given that the state can do it.
right,
So there would be no need for the order to allow,
right.
and so therefore the order should be withdrawn.
Yeah.
That's what I would expect to happen, and that's why I'm making the motion to say,
It should
let's
never,
return it without a
we should
recommendation.
never have seen this.
Yeah, the question really is moot,
Right,
you know,
Right.
because,
But we can't do that here at the committee level, it has to
Okay,
happen at the
okay.
council
no,
level.
okay, so all in favor of the motion?
I,
Opposed? No.
okay.
Okay, all right.
So motion by Bill to no recommendation. Right,
Peter, I'm keeping notes.
okay, thanks.
It's not a no recommendation, it's without recommendation.
Without recommendation. okay.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so there we are. So on to the next item.
Should I close the next item? It's the next item.
Order of taking.
Oh, yeah. I'll make a motion to return to council with approval pending discussion.
I would second that.
Maybe I should
So-
introduce
so
what
this
we're
is-
talking about.
Yeah, so this is the corner of Wall Street.
Right,
And so the town is taking and giving compensation to the property owner to shave an edge off the corner so that they can make changes.
that's a
to the
dangerous
roadway.
turn, yeah.
I don't know if it's tied into the High Street bridge replacement or not. I think it is.
I think it is.
I think it is.
Yeah,
I
that's
think so that they can actually go ahead with the
Yeah.
dismantling of the
Right.
dam.
Right. Should I don't feel compelled to read this. Ordered that the town council assembled vote for the purpose of taking a portion of property located at 23 Wall Street, Bridgewater, Plymouth County, Massachusetts, which is particularly described in the deed recorded at the Plymouth County Registry of Deeds, Book 45-234, page 111. The taking is for the purpose of laying out and reconfiguring the intersection of High Street and Wall Street. The damages awarded with respect to said parcel of land are $6,130, and titled to said property is vested in Lloyd and Christine King by virtue of deed dated February 18th, 2015, and recorded at Book 45-234, page 111. Be it ordered, the taking of fee simple title in the parcel of land, accepting any easement of record shown on the plan attached hereto and to be recorded herewith, along with all buildings and trees thereupon described, is hereby authorized in accordance with general laws, chapter 41, section 14, chapter 43, section 30, and chapter 79, all as amended for municipal purposes, included but not limited to, inter alia, improving the town's public ways, safety and drainage, and other municipal purposes and for all purposes and uses accessory thereto. So I wonder if the Kings are here. I guess not.
Well, I think this is a negotiated value, so I believe they've been
They've been
Party
apprised.
to
Yeah,
the-
yeah.
to the situation.
So your motion was to,
Was to send it, I think I said, send it back to the council with with the recommend to approve.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Any more discussion?
I think not.
No. Fred, what did you vote?
I vote in favor.
Affirmative. Bill?
Yep.
You're a yay.
Yes.
And I'm a yay. Okay, unanimous. Okay, that's easy. Okay, and the third and final agenda item is acknowledgement of the acceptance of remediation waste at Maryland's Landing Land Reclamation Project. Whereas on February 28, 2017, Town Council unanimously approved issuance of a letter to the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection consenting to the land reclamation project at approximately 8 acres of land owned by the McDonald's industry doing business as Maryland's Landing that has been mined of its soils, gravel, and stone. Whereas the Department of Environmental Protection has issued an administrative consent order approving the land reclamation project. Whereas the Department of Environmental Protection oversees the reclamation project, including the testing of all fill. Whereas McDonald Industry now proposes to accept remediation waste at Maryland's Landing. Whereas acceptance of remediation waste is subject to sampling as required by Mass DEP, and such sampling results shall not exceed existing testing criteria for soil. Whereas the town manager recommends the issuance of a municipal consent based upon the DEP policy governing land reclamation, and whereas land reclamation will bring the land contour back to its original form, approximate original form, be it resolved, the town council acknowledges and approves the acceptance of remediation waste at Maryland's Landing, provided it is approved by Mass DEP and meets all applicable regulatory standards. So so the town is really just giving its consent for this to happen, and it will really be overseen by this Mass DEP. Once we approve this, it's kind of out of our hands, right?
Yeah. Where is Maryland's Landing? I don't know where that is.
Bridgewater, Halifax Town Line. Way out east. On 106, I think.
So is it the old dump area?
I don't know. Not sure.
May I speak? I
Sure.
can answer that question. Yeah, my name is Donald Nagel. I'm an attorney for McDonald Industries in Maryland's Landing. The location is on 106. I believe it's 106. And it's right next to the closed Halifax landfill. So if that helps. Right on the border of Halifax, and I believe the sign says East Bridgewater, but I think the exact location of the entrance is in Bridgewater, and certainly the land that encompasses Maryland's Landing is in Bridgewater. But the project includes both Bridgewater and Halifax land in both towns, including the closed Halifax landfill.
Yeah, I wasn't sure because when you look at 106, I thought it was off of 106, but it sounds like, is it to the left, is it to the right
Is it
of Nick
south?
and Angela's, or?
Is it
No.
south on the south side of the street?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so because the line itself sits between Nick and Angelo's and the new marijuana retail shop. Had to get that in. So right there. And so it must be further, the line must bend further back or something like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is a little confusing. But I do know that the town line between Bridgewater and Halifax pretty much divides Maryland's Landing land and the old Halifax landfill.
Okay.
So do we have a motion? Or any
Uh,
more discussion?
I just had a question if I could for the attorney.
Sure.
I would assume, Mr. Nagel, that any matters relative to protection of the aquifer in that area are under the domain of Mass DEP, and that regulations existing pertaining to that have been observed and DEP has approved.
That is correct, sir. There's a very rigorous criteria for different contaminants in the soil. And DEP is not approving any contaminants that have the likelihood of leaching into the groundwater. And so we're currently operating under that strict criteria to protect groundwater resources.
Thank you.
Through the magic of Google Earth, that's very easy to find. Yeah, so it's a road that leads back, and I see the landfill behind, and so I see where it's going. Okay, great, thank you.
I would make a motion to return to the council with a.
Excuse me.
Yes,
Go ahead.
sorry, Pat.
Go ahead, Pat.
I wanted to ask a question earlier and it was delayed.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So perhaps I can ask Mr. Nagel, because I doubt that anyone else will know the answer to this.
Go ahead.
There was a hearing in Halifax back in April. Could you tell me the decisions that they made at that time?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah, there was a hearing and there was a discussion, and the town voted to approve it or consent to in recognizing and approving the acceptance of remediation waste.
The same thing that we're doing tonight.
Exactly, exact same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully DEP will be doing their job so that we aren't accepting asbestos from Chelsea, things of that nature.
Believe me, they are doing their job, and very well, in regulating this material, and it's, you know, one of the most highly regulated activities that I used to work at DEP. And this is, you know, an impressive oversight by DEP on, you know, a pretty novel project, really. So rest assured, they're very stringent, and their oversight is very strict.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have a motion.
I would make a motion that we approve and return to the council with a positive recommendation.
I'll second it.
Okay. Fred, your vote is
Yes.
Bill?
Yeah.
Me too. Okay. We're approved with a positive recommendation to the full council.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time and everything.
Halfway there.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I would move that we adjourn.
Second.
Fred, you're a yes?
Yes.
I'm a yes.
Yes. Okay, we're adjourned.
Thank you. Have a good night, all.
7:43. Thank you all.